So what I'm going to do today now is I'm going to talk about the Lord's Day. So the Lord's Day. Um, this is not a big topic among Adventists because it's very clear, but most other people are confused on this. This is actually the only place in Scripture this phrase is literally used. It's not directly written this way anywhere else in Scripture. So I think, of course, the Lord did that on purpose. So this question about the Lord's Day. Now, we can address some of these issues. You know, the Lord's Day has become this phrase or this reference has become popular. Well, the Catholic Church made it popular to refer to Sunday, but of course, there's no biblical reference, no biblical support whatsoever for that. Again, this phrase, the Lord's Day, isn't used anywhere else in Scripture. And there's, of course, no place in Scripture that the Bible puts that type of importance on the first day of the week. For us as Adventists, we have the scriptural evidence that we have. We know that the Lord's Day, the two evidences that we refer to is that Jesus talked about the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath, and that's in Mark chapter 2:28. So, he said he's the Lord of the Sabbath, so therefore the Sabbath day is the Lord's Day. That's the reasoning that we use. The second thing that we use, obviously, is the fourth commandment. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. So the Lord's Day is the Sabbath day. Now, since we don't have any direct references, then we have to search the scriptures to understand what God is trying to tell us. And so these are the closest connections the most indirect connections that we can find. So what is the Lord's Day? And what is the Lord's Day in terms of Revelation chapter 1? Well, I'm going to take you to, the fourth commandment first to show you. Of course, the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In 6 days, the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and he rested on the seventh day. And wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he hallowed it. Okay, so you see the phrase the Lord, and then you see the phrase the day. And so you can see in the Sabbath commandment, you see the Lord's Day is actually the wording is actually in the commandment, and it's actually there 3 times. So, of course, this is the most direct reference that I can find in Scripture to the Lord's Day.
Interesting, the 3-part cadence.
Yes, and of course, that's one of the things that I think is significant, obviously, because you're dealing with the Creator and creation. Yes. Now, it doesn't stop here, because not only is, we see the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord, and we see the Lord's Day in the phrase, but you'll notice that in the fourth commandment says the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord. So you literally see the phrase, the day of the Lord, is also in the fourth commandment. Okay, so what's important about this is that when we talk about the Sabbath day, in terms of the Lord's Day, you think of the seventh day of the week. But when you use the phrase, the day of the Lord, then that gives you a totally different connotation. And the Lord's Day can properly be stated the day of the Lord just as much as the Lord's Day. And that's where I see Revelation going, what the Bible is saying. So the weekly Sabbath is a type of the eschatological Sabbath. And this isn't my idea. This is from the Scripture, and this is what I'm showing you. So it says, the first one's 6 days. There's 6 days, and then the Lord's Day, which is the Sabbath. We know that, right? Well, Peter says that a day is as 1,000 years. That's 2 Peter 3, verse 8. So the idea is that there's 6,000 years and of sin, and then there's the day of the Lord. And by the way, that's exactly that phrase that Peter uses in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. When he describes the day of the Lord, you'll notice that this is the same context when he says a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. It's the exact same context. So he's using the idea of the day of the Lord in terms of this, the ending or the resulting, the bringing to a culmination the conflict between good and evil. So the idea here is that the weekly Sabbath becomes a type of the eschatological Sabbath, and that what God is pointing us to in Revelation chapter 1, then, when I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, the question comes, there's a question, is God describing the day on which John was given the revelation, or is he describing the subject and the content of the revelation that John saw? Or is it both? And of course, I think that God is thorough, and I think that it means both. But the problem is that, again, I can grab onto something and hold on to it as truth, but if I deny other truths, then the truth I'm denying can be greater than the truth I'm holding on to. And sadly, I think that most people in the past have zeroed in on this idea of this argument, is the day of the Lord the Sabbath, or is the day of the Lord Sunday? And they get caught up in this kind of turmoil, and they miss the whole point of Revelation chapter 1 about what the day of the Lord is actually about. Because the idea is that John is in the Spirit on the Lord's day, as I will show you, which means to me that John is being shown the day of the Lord. He's being, the whole book of Revelation is a prophecy of the day of the Lord. And that's what John says at the beginning. He's in the Spirit on the day of the Lord, or the Lord's day, and God shows him the day of the Lord. And that's much more than just, one day a week that you're going to church. That's not the idea. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying that John isn't given the vision on the Sabbath. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but that's not the point of what Revelation 1 is saying. So both the Old Testament and the New Testament employ the phrase, the day of the Lord, to describe the last day, or the eschatological, that's a big fancy word for the last days, to describe the last day prophecy of the end. So both the Old and New Testament use that phrase, the day of the Lord, to describe that. So when I look at this chiastic structure, and I see that John is in the Spirit on the day of the Lord's day, or the day of the Lord, then what I see is that everything in this chiastic structure supports the apex of the structure, which is the day of the Lord. So the revelation of Jesus, the mystery that's given in terms of the revelation of Jesus, is the day of the Lord. That's what the revelation is about. The revelation, the day of the Lord, is the revelation of the things which must shortly come to pass. This is what's written down in the book of Revelation. And actually, it is the day of the Lord that fulfills the revelation of God, his name, his character, and how he deals with evil, and how he saves those who desire to be saved, and gives over to the wicked, gives them over to what they're choosing. This is part of the, so what I see is this whole chiastic structure supporting this concept. And so it leads me to conclude that John being in the Spirit on the day of the Lord is much more than which day he's having the vision. It's actually describing the subject and the content of the vision. Does that make sense?
One of the connotations I see connected with the day of the Lord is the idea of Judgment Day, and of course, all judgment is actually centered in what Christ accomplished on the cross. And in that sense as well, sort of the cross is also the day of the Lord, when he got the victory for us there. And that, is like a chiastic center in the pattern of 7 as well.
Right. But of course, as I've been showing you here in Revelation, there's many references to Christ's death on the cross.
Yeah.
But that's always in the context of what was. That's the foundation on which the revelation is being built. So the revelation itself is pointing forward to the things that have not yet happened, that are to shortly come to pass. And so as we will see, we talked about the is and the was and the is to come. The was, every time it mentioned the was reference, even as you see it here, he was dead. That's the reference to his crucifixion and his resurrection, right?
Yes.
So yes, so what you're saying is absolutely true. But the
Yes.
point here of Revelation is based on the idea that that's a given foundation on which you are building. Yeah.
Could you just say that in a different way, the subject and content of what is being revealed to John? Could you just kind of word that in a different way, please?
Yeah, so John's in the Spirit on the day on the Lord's Day, or the day of the Lord. And we have understood that in the past, mostly in terms of, well, he's given this vision of revelation on the Sabbath, which may be true. But the point here is that he's in the Spirit on the day of the Lord. He's actually being shown the day of the Lord. He's actually seeing a revelation of the coming day of the Lord, where that day that God has promised throughout Scripture, and I'm going to show you, we're going to go there next, where all prophets of old, or in the New Testament prophets, have described the day of the Lord, that John is actually in the Spirit on that day, and he actually sees that day.
That's the to come, and John is seeing the to come.
Yes, that's that's why he's right. You see the number 2 on the chiastic structure of Revelation 1. It tells us that that day is that which is must shortly come to pass, or it's the things which are going to be here revealed hereafter. Yes.
And just one other quick thought, Jesus caveat to that pray that your flight should not be on the Sabbath. How does that correlate with this context?
I'm not sure in terms of how obviously Jesus is telling, he's telling the disciples, and he's telling us as we read it, about something that's future to happening. And in that context, that's exactly what Jesus is doing with John. He's actually giving him a vision of something that's coming. Yes.
Well,
And Matthew uses, go ahead.
Well, the thought I was having was that to pray that your flight not be on the Sabbath, that you would not be caught up with fear and anxiety, because if you are experience this to come, then you have the peace which comes from above.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
There's actually also, the thought, on the Sabbath, that's, the process is over on the Sabbath. The six days of work are over, and the time for a character transformation is over. And now you're supposed to be resting in the Lord. And if you still need to flee out of the false system on the Sabbath day, it's sort of too late to flee.
Well, I won't jump to Matthew 24. That's a different time. I'm going to be jumping enough tonight, so I'll.
Sure.